Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Pensentions that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrocint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrocint General Insurance Company.
Have you registered for your COVID-19 digital vaccination certificate yet? Pensentions who received their COVID-19 vaccine in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are encouraged to apply for their vaccine certificate. If you are planning on traveling or planning to attend upcoming fully vaccinated events, here are 2 steps you can follow. Step 1. Send an email to vaccinecertificate@gov.bc with the following documents. 1. Your COVID-19 vaccination card. 2. Photo identification card. 3. Passport size photo. This is optional. Step 2. Be patient and allow for a maximum of 72 hours for the information to be forwarded to your email. Don't forget to check your spam or junk mail. For more information, call 784-451-2183 or the COVID-19 hotline, 784-534-4325. Your health, a shared responsibility.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Profiles. My guest on this edition is the former Director of Economic Planning, Mrs. Laura Anthony-Browne. You'll meet her when we come back from the break.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Pensentions that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrocint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrocint General Insurance Company.
I'm Shanika John, Chief Health Promotion Officer acting in the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Environment. Since St. Vincent and the Grenadines started administering the COVID-19 vaccines, we've encouraged persons from different age group, different risk factors to get vaccinated. For those persons who have contracted the COVID-19 virus, vaccinated or unvaccinated, the severity and the impact of the virus is significantly different. If you've not yet considered getting the vaccine, I encourage you to do so today. Get vaccinated.
You're watching Profiles, and my guest on this edition is the former Director of Economic Planning, Mrs. Laura Anthony-Browne. Laura, I'm going to call you Laura, I think.
That's fine.
It's a pleasure having you on Profiles.
Thank you, Tony, for inviting me to the program.
Right. So I'm hoping over the next hour or so, my viewers would get to know a bit more of who Laura Anthony-Browne is. Let me start out by inviting you to tell me. I mean, you're retired now.
I am.
Tell me what you would consider to be the most memorable period of your life.
Okay, thank you again for inviting me. And I would say the 21 years or so that I have served this country as Director of Planning, Economic Planning, that is definitely a very memorable period in my life.
Is it memorable in a good way?
Mostly.
Mostly?
Yes, 99% good way.
Right. So tell me about that period. Why was it so, why was it so meaningful to you?
Yeah, it was meaningful because, as I said to the team that I worked with at the Economic Planning in the Ministry of Finance, generally anyhow, I would say to them all the time that we are so fortunate in that we get to do things every day that impact the lives of Vincentians in meaningful and real ways. So we were not just turning up to do a job and clock in at 8 o'clock and leave at 4:15, but we could see the things that we were doing really impacting people's lives. And that is what development is about. That is what development is. And so it meant a lot to me. It really did mean a lot to me.
So tell me, over that 21 years, I guess you were overseeing projects that had such an impact that, they were life-changing projects for mainly the poor, but also people in general. Tell me what some of these were and why you got so excited about overseeing them.
Okay, well, the public sector investment program, which was only as part of the portfolio of Director of Planning, that's where we got to do the projects. But so that was, really a good part of the portfolio, as I say. And for example, we did a project such as the renovation of the Milton Cato Hospital.
Right.
We did an irrigation project. Well, not doing it, but we were responsible for
implementing
it,
yes.
having general oversight of it, for sourcing the funding and making all the things happen. Because, of course, as you know, project implementation, there are several, in project management, there are several steps along the way.
Yes.
And so we were doing the steps and then somebody else was practically executing it. But we were, very, very closely involved in implementation of those projects. So the irrigation project, for example, which was a 25 million euro project, and because we had an attitude in central planning, economic planning, that water, the provision of water is a pro-poor policy.
Yeah.
And whether it is that you are actually taking water to people's homes or facilitating water for farmers.
Farmers, irrigation.
Yeah,
yes.
irrigation. So we were really, really excited to see that project come to fruition. It was a long, hard negotiation, but we were happy to see it.
And
yes.
that project, and I'm going to be flirting between your work and you yourself, right?
Yes.
But that project, that irrigation project, I think that, from memory, that mainly was targeting the banana farmers in those days.
Yes, it was mainly targeting banana farmers, but the funds were realized as a result of the recognition by all of the authorities that we were losing the banana markets. The regime for trading in bananas was changing. And so the European Union introduced what they call a stabilization of export earnings facility, STABEX.
STABEX.
Yes. And they invited countries to submit an investment plan So at the back of our minds was that, yes, while these funds are to cushion bananas, so to speak, and try to increase the yield, because that was one of the things that people said, that yield was low compared to, you know, the others in the market. So what we were trying to do, even though the focus was bananas, was to do the project in such a way such that other agricultural produce can benefit, you know, other crops. Unfortunately, it didn't materialize in that way. The outcome wasn't exactly as was anticipated. And so the investments which were necessary to continue such a program were not made. And so the project fell off eventually.
So you were like, as director of economic planning, one of your main functions, if I can use the word main, was like the country's chief negotiator for soft financing and grants.
Yes.
And from donor agencies, tell me a bit about these donor agencies. How do they operate? How do you go about crafting a project that they would be interested in? Or is it that their projects drove your policy?
No, it was by mutual agreement. Of course, each of them, they would have their particular framework, and they would determine that we would fund this column of items.
Okay.
And then in our collaboration, so we know they're funding agriculture projects or they're funding health projects. So we have a project here from the Ministry of Health or from the Ministry of Agriculture. Then we would let's approach donor A, let's approach donor B with this one. So you would start the conversations at a fairly low level. And as the conversations became more focused in terms of, yes, this is something we can do, then we went up higher up the line, etc.
You clearly were in a position of leadership, and I want to go back to the you now. What prepared you for leadership? What in your life prepared you for finally arriving at, a top job within the civil service?
And I actually don't know what prepared me for leadership. I went to school and I'm obedient, so your parents said to go to school and to learn your lessons, even if you didn't find them particularly interesting, but you did that. And then went to university after so I went to numerous primary schools, then to the girls' high school, then to the grammar school in Lopi House, and then went to I taught for a while, and then to UB. And I came back after graduating from KPhil. KPhil people. So after I graduated, I got a job with the government, and I was so excited. I mean, I don't know what I expected in terms of getting a job, because this is what you're supposed to be doing, not so?
Right.
But I was super excited. So everything they gave me, I went in as an admin cadet, and anything they gave me and everything they gave me to do, it was overdone. I researched every aspect, every angle. So when I presented my briefings to my boss, the Director General of Finance and Planning, I'm done. I've given him my briefs. And then one day, we were operating at the time in the post office ministerial building. That's where the Ministry of Finance and Planning was. Of course, the finance complex wasn't there.
Didn't exist at that time.
It didn't exist at the time.
Yes.
And so I got a telephone call, and she says she's calling from the Prime Minister's office. She's the Prime Minister's secretary, and the Prime Minister would like to speak with me. The Prime Minister then was the late Sir James Mitchell. So I dutifully went to his office, and he said, after preliminaries, he said he really just wanted to see who was the face behind the change in the Ministry of Finance. So I said, change, sir? He said, well, he had been seeing a difference in the briefings coming to him.
So he wanted to know who
and
the author was,
he wanted to know. So I said, oh, okay. And he said, the general, he said, not immediately identified me, but something, whatever it was at the time that he was reading, and he liked it. And he thought it was so thorough. So he wanted to meet the person.
So you were
Yes.
spotted very early on in your career.
Yes.
And you were attributing that to you overcooking the stuff.
Yes,
like
I
really
did. I did.
cooking it and cooking it again.
Detail,
Yes.
everything. I looked for every eye. I looked for everything.
Were you always that sort of person?
I don't know if I was, I was disciplined all along.
So does discipline involve paying attention to detail?
Yes, I think so. You pay attention to details. So, I did what I had to do. And my mother always, she had something that she dangled around the house. Everything worth doing is worth doing well. I said, what's the matter with her? So she didn't allow you to half do anything. Everything worth doing is worth doing well.
So that was a mantra?
Yes, all the time. And she also always said, give up your right for peace sake, because there were 10 of us children in the household. And when you have 10 children, there, and so as though she was always asking me to give up my right for peace sake. I said, but the others must have right for peace sake too. But anyway, but she said,
she wanted you to compromise.
Everything worth doing is worth doing well. So whenever I had something to do, I say, I'm going to give it my best shot.
We are moving along quite quickly, at the end of our first segment. And I asked you to come here with some music or music choices of yours. I'm going to ask you for your first one. You're going to tell me what it is, and you're going to tell me why you're choosing this.
Okay. Well, you haven't asked me about my faith. I hope you would ask me.
I will get on to that. I can't have a lay preacher sitting with me and not get on to that.
Yeah, my life is grounded in a deep and abiding faith in God, but I am also a Methodist.
Right.
And when I was at UE, especially, I used the hymn book to help me through. I learned practically every hymn in the hymn book. And of course, because I'm a Methodist, the Charles Wesley hymns are profound. What shall I do, my God, to raise my sovereign God to my sovereign God to raise?
Yeah.
And that is a hymn which I sing all the time. It's difficult to not love the beauty and the profoundness of the hymns written by Charles Wesley, who, as you know, is the brother of John Wesley. So that's one of my songs, which I sing all the time. Come quickly, gracious Lord, and take possession of my soul. So it's actually, that hymn is actually based on Ephesians chapter 3, verses 16 to 18, I think. So it means a lot to me. Well, the entire hymn book, but that one.
Let's listen to it. Let's go to the break and listen to Mrs. Laura Anthony-Browne's first selection of music.
What shall I do, my Lord, to love? My loving God to praise, my loving God to praise, my loving God to praise, my loving God to praise. Let them pray and right to you, and let us have in grace, and let us have in grace, and let us have in grace, and let us have in grace. What shall I do? Let God to love, and let the brethren ask you, and let us have in grace, and let our son.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentions that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
I got my COVID-19 vaccine and my booster shot to ensure that I am protected. I've never been tested positive for COVID-19, and even if I did contract the virus, I've never been sick. And I'm confident that the COVID-19 vaccine significantly contributed to that. The vaccines are safe, they are effective, and they're one of the ways that we can navigate this pandemic together. If you've not yet considered vaccination or getting your booster shot, I encourage you to do so today. Get vaccinated.
Every gracious Lord, take possession of my Lord. My Lord, because thou said to make my everlasting throne, my
You're looking at Profiles, and my guest on this edition is Miss Laura Anthony-Browne. Laura, when we went to the break, well, before we went to the break, in the first segment, you brought up a statement about pro-poor policy, okay? And you're an economist, sorry. That's your professional training. And I want to find out a bit more about economics as it addresses the very thing that you spoke about, pro-poor policies. But firstly, tell me what made you go into economics in the first place.
Yeah, I think it was a default. I actually wanted to do law.
Mhm.
And as I told you, I'm from a large family. And looking at the economics of it,
Right.
and considering that if I wanted to do law, to be able to practice law, I needed 5 years.
Right.
And I'm thinking short term now in how you finance 5 years of education and somebody else doesn't have a chance to do 3. So it might be better for me, more reasonable, I would say, for me to consider doing a 3-year degree rather than trying to do a 5-year degree.
So law was your first love, but you compromised, you decided, okay, let me do a 3-year degree so that I can leave a little bit for my siblings to
Yeah, that's what I thought, yes.
a little bit of the resources that were
Yes.
available.
I ended up doing 3 additional degrees after that.
Well, there you go. So tell me what, before we get on to economics, tell me what were they?
Well, I did a master's in marketing.
Okay.
I did a master's in financial economics, and I
Right.
did a master's in English sociolinguistics.
There was no stopping you. Huh?
Well,
Absolutely no stopping.
some of my friends say that the last master's degree, which I did, is really a vanity project. You know, it wasn't, but there was.
But there isn't anything wrong with vanity if it's safe and it's
No, but
yeah.
there was a good reason why I wanted to be formally trained in language and linguistics, especially.
What about economics?
Yes.
That addresses policies that are meant to change the lives of poor people?
Well, that's what economics really, because we live in a small island, and economics economics 101 is about the allocation of scarce resources. How you allocate resources when you have limited, you have competing interests. And we are poor as a country. We are, a small island developing country, but a poor country. And it also coincides, I think, very well with my spiritual, faith-based approach to life.
Yeah.
In that, as a Christian, as somebody who believes deeply in God, that you want to equalize, you want to have equality as far as it is possible.
Yes.
You want to alleviate as far as it is possible the conditions, the socioeconomic conditions of people who you are sharing a space with. And with that kind of background and doing economics, it gave you an opportunity to sort of twin the two. So I would think.
So let's talk about the challenges that poor countries, and I use the word poor guardedly, but resource lacking countries like St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And then when I say resource lacking, I mean there isn't an abundance of generally the things that drive wealth.
Yeah.
How do we prevent ourselves from going through that revolving door of seeking donor funds for grants or loans, as grants and loans for developmental purposes? Is there an end in sight to that, or is it really a revolving door?
It is a revolving door to a large extent because, for example, in 2015, St. Vincent and the Grenadines signed on with the rest of the world to the Sustainable Development Goals. To implement, I have a little beef about the SDGs, by the way, because there are 17 of them.
Yes.
But to me, the international community has prevailed upon the rest of the world to keep God out of the discussions. And so they say, oh yeah, we should have separation of, church and state and all of those things. But you have 17 really laudable goals, SDGs, and to my mind, what is missing is the spiritual component.
Do you
of it,
think
yes.
that one of the reasons is because maybe there are different groups of people that go along a different spiritual line? So you've got the Muslims, you got the Hindus, you got the Christians. So they thought, okay, let's not touch this.
Yes, and that's exactly what. But they could, to me, they could carve out a space within each. So each community, meaning regional community, can, okay, so if I'm whatever your beliefs are, but give you a space to operate within there. Okay, but what I was saying though is that so these goals were implemented. They are there, 17 goals.
Yeah.
But to achieve them, and the international community has until 2030, which is just now. But to get them done, you need a lot of financing. The first one is to eradicate poverty. Yes. Second, to end poverty, eradicate hunger.
Yes. They're very linked.
Yes, but they are very linked. But how do you eradicate poverty? How do you end hunger? Unless you have a massive injection of capital, financial resources to attain that. So we don't have not so much in country do not believe in savings.
Right.
And as an economist, the savings equal investment, that's the basic macroeconomic, a basic macroeconomic policy. But we are looking for the investments, but we are not sufficiently speaking about the savings component. So savings is not big discussion point, and we said we need to pour to save. No, but we need to encourage it. We need to put measures in place. So unless we have savings of our own, then we have to have.
Is it that savings almost equal, and I'm going along with your jargon, almost equal austerity?
No, no.
How do you cut back so that you can get enough to save?
Apply the principle to your own. If each individual sat down with every working person, say, this is my income, these are my expenses. I have to now make my income and my expenses work for me.
Yeah, but that's at the individual level.
So then
I'm talking about the national level.
Yes.
Now.
So but the
government,
the macro is just an aggregation of all of the micro situation. So you're just aggregating to move into a macro policy. So if we each applied that, and if the country applied that, it can work. It can work. We talked at the very beginning of this conversation about the financial complex, which did not exist when I joined the public service. And I remember how proud the then Minister of Finance, then Prime Minister, was to say to the nation that the country built this building from its own resources. It did not take a loan from the Bank of St. Vincent, from any institution. That was like, no, we have to build. We need an office space, and we're going to build it. But each year, we are going to ensure that we have money available from the recurrent account. So if you push it hard enough, it's, of course, savings is difficult to do. But if you push it hard enough, so until we get to that point of being able to generate the level of savings, then the country, like all other SIDS, must go through that door, must go through to the international community and say, come, we need some funding.
You talked about your spirituality and the fact that you are grounded in the Christian faith. And I will touch that from time to time, but I want to touch it in a sense that relates to economics. And I want to know if addressing the needs of the poor, which are maybe some of the underwriting principles of economics, does that complement very well your Christian beliefs?
Oh, yes, it does. I alluded to that already. In Christianity, the biggest thing about Christianity is love for God and love for your fellow man and woman, fellow men. Okay, Jesus, who we believe to be the Messiah as Christians, he said when the scribes and the Pharisees tried to challenge him, and they said, Master, what is the greatest commandment? Because we had the commandment in the Old Testament given that Moses brought down from the tablet, etc. And he says, to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and soul and mind, and to love thy neighbor as thyself. So if you have that love for brothers, love for fellow men, you are definitely going to be concerned about their well-being. You are not going to see a brother man suffer and not think about a way in which you can contribute to the improvement, his or her improvement. So fundamentally, the Christian faith really is an economic faith as well.
We're at the end of our second segment, and I'm going to ask you for your second piece of music. You're going to tell me what it is. You're going to tell me why.
Okay, I already said to you that coming from a musical family, well, let me don't say it because I don't play music. They didn't give me those skills, but I was surrounded always by music and so on. So I have this song which I saw a group at our church years ago do a dance to,
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean dancer. And, I said, okay, young people dancing to this and so on. And I didn't know what it was really, but it sounded good. And then much later on, I tried to maintain an exercise routine.
Right.
So I wanted to design my own workout playlist because I had some of the lyrics were not consistent with my own values. So I was Googling or whatever it is I was doing, appropriate music. And I've got this one, Jaylon Nurse is the young man. He has an interesting story. And from the Caribbean, we dance, so I love that.
So
Jaylon Nurse,
what's the name?
Caribbean dancer.
Right. So let's go to the second break with Miss Laura Anthony-Browne's selection of our second song.
Yeah. When they ask me where I'm from the Caribbean, and I'm a Christian boy. Oh lad, oh lad. Nothing wrong with dancing. Yeah. Part of our culture. No ways rotating, no. Don't let the devil tempt you. Christian from the Caribbean, and music is a part of our life. Yeah, we dance and raise flag, but represent Jesus Christ. Can't promote no reveling, cause the Bible not tell me them thing is sin. Used to do them thing before, but Jesus lets me from deep within. So no more partying, no more drinking, no. Cause Jesus saved me, but me dance when the gospel hit me. Caribbean Christian, and dancing in my blood. Caribbean Christian, and dancing in my blood, my blood. Caribbean Christian, and dancing in my blood. Caribbean Christian, and dancing in my blood, my blood. Don't hold me, let me dance. Don't hold me, let me dance.
I'm Shanika John, Chief Health Promotion Officer acting in the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Environment. Since St. Vincent and the Grenadines started administering the COVID-19 vaccines, we've encouraged persons from different age group, different risk factors to get vaccinated. For those persons who have contracted the COVID-19 virus, vaccinated or unvaccinated, the severity and the impact of the virus is significantly different. If you've not yet considered getting the vaccine, I encourage you to do so today. Get vaccinated.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered by a company owned by Vincentions that understands your unique insurance needs? At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
Let me dance with Jesus, let me dance with Jesus, oh yeah, dance with Jesus, oh yeah, yeah. Young and old, come along, everyone can do it. No worry. worry about nothing, it ain't got no age limit, cause this party is heavenly. That's the problem gone away. It's a new kind of dancing, can lead you to your healing. So get up and dance your problem them away. I know you've been waiting long, but your breakthrough is today. Forget about every negative thing. Get up and dance into your blessing. It might look confusing, but it's Caribbean Christian living. Caribbean Christian and dancing in my blood. Caribbean Christian and dancing in my blood, my blood. Caribbean Christian and dancing in my blood. Caribbean Christian and dancing in my blood, my blood.
This is Profiles, and my guest on this edition of the program is former Director of Economic Planning, Mrs. Laura Anthony-Browne. Laura, I'm going to stick with economics for a bit. I'm going to stick with your job, your former job, as the person who sat at the top of rolling out all these projects that were developmental in nature, and they were funded mainly by donor funds. I want to talk a bit about donor funding, and there's this argument that a lot of it revolves around the question of moral reparations. They're only given because they're guilty or they committed a crime, an act against humanity. We're talking about slavery and transatlantic slave trade and so on. And so we are underdeveloped by virtue of the state that they left us in. Do you think that concept of moral reparations sits within that whole donor funding mechanism?
I truly believe that underlying the decisions by some of these countries to become involved, say, for example, the European Union, which their contributions to their member countries, that's grant, not concessional loans, but grant. So none of it is repaid. And it's undoubtedly, because Europe was so much involved in slavery, I believe underlying that some of that is, entering the conversation. But they also have other, I think, outside of the EU, the World Bank and the CDB in the region, they are development banks, but they're also operating at a profit.
Yeah.
So it is not as though they are doing this out of the goodness of their heart.
But they have to be sustainable.
They have to be have to be sustainable. And but when you look at their balance sheets, they're doing really, really well. And so even though we get funds at really good concessional rates from these, but they are also satisfying their own internal, benchmarks and whatever it is. So they're profit oriented.
Some more literature, not so old, but Fanon talks about, in The Wretched of the Earth, talks about the same donors, the same big, some people call them the Washington Consensus, but it's outside of, it's Washington Consensus plus, okay? It's almost like a conspiracy to give, but to give to ensure that you are kept within a particular framework, a particular level of development, a particular dependency. Do you see that whole financing mechanism, grant or concessionary loans, somehow hinged to what Fanon may have been talking about?
I have thought about it a lot, especially in the context in which Fanon has described and developed his work. I am not so sure that I am sure that there are some underlying things, but I'm not so sure that, broadly speaking, that they have set out to say, let's keep them underdeveloped.
Mm.
You know, Walter Rodney, for example, in 1999, he wrote his, I think it was 1999. No, because he died he died long before that, so it's not 99. He wrote this lovely work, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And there are some lessons that we could take away from that, from his work, and to ensure we don't fall into the same. There are other works that we can, but somehow we, as in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, reluctant to learn or to learn some of the lessons. I go back to the savings attitude.
Right.
I feel that we can try to man up a little bit more, marshal our own pathway.
Yes.
If we are able to say, well, we can do this a little bit. And
if not even for pride, eh?
Yes, for pride too, and channel our resources a little bit better. But we seem to have become resigned almost, so and that's a mentality really that we need to change in our country.
Over your 21 years, you would have seen certain thematic areas that development funds were targeted to. Of course, they have shifted. If we're to talk about current times, climate change is a big one. 21 years ago, I don't think that was in the conversation.
That was not so much the center of the conversation. Right. It was there on the fringes. And even if you look at the way in which ministries were set up, so like the climate change may have been attached to the Ministry of Health or a little unit there, but not at the center.
Yes.
But now climate change is a cross-cutting theme.
Right.
It's a cross-cutting issue. So it really occupies a place at the center of things, where things are.
And also, and I may be wrong, and you will correct me if I am, but I think when you look at things like alternative energy, so the focus is away from fossil fuels, because we realize, that has a double whammy effect on climate change, and also it's not a limitless resource. But interestingly, as we look at alternative energy, we look at, as you said earlier on, we have limited resources, but we have unlimited sunshine.
That's true.
and maybe it's timely to have that at the center of our developmental narrative. What are your thoughts?
In terms of sunshine and how it can, well, I was speaking with someone a week ago. So they were doing some work, a surveyor actually, and talking about a property. And so I said, I took my phone and I said, this is what you get. So he looked at the pictures and he said, you're paying taxes on that? Because where I live, I get to capture the most beautiful sunsets.
Right.
And so, yes, there is if I can go back to something that Sir James Mitchell once told me, that he did not believe that St. Vincent and the Grenadines ought to be beholden unto anybody. He had a kind of an attitude, proud, so even while they were fighting the changes in the banana regime and so on, and he would say to me, Laura, I think we can sell a hotel room in the Grenadines for the same price or better price than a hotel room in Paris or London or whatever, because of what we have here.
Right.
So to your point about being able to use what you have and to make something beautiful, meaningful, and significantly contributing to your development with it, but that needs a lot of discipline. It needs a lot of discipline in how we approach things, in putting people in places to have the right conversations, in capitalizing on investment opportunities which may exist, and so on.
Let's go back to the Laura Anthony-Browne, and let me take you to your early days, your your single digit and early teenage days, were you living a rural life, or were you urbanized, or was it a mixture?
Well, I would say the best way to describe it is that I had a nomadic life.
Mhm.
And you would say, why would you say that? That's because I started primary school at age 5 or whatever the age is. I started at the Chumuka Primary School. After 1 year, I moved with my family and I attended the Wesley Hall Methodist School
Yes.
for 1 year. So that's 2 primary schools. Then after 1 year, I was sent back. I returned to Chumuka. So I was at Chumuka. I don't know if I spent a year there, maybe it's a year. And then my father, who was a school teacher, he was transferred as headmaster or principal, I don't know what they call it, of the Westwood Primary School, Methodist School. So I was sent to Westwood. And so 4 primary schools. And then most of my siblings, because I'm actually number 9 of 10.
Wow.
So most of them now were going to school, secondary schools in Kingston. And so then I was shipped with them too. And so my 5th primary school was the Kingston Government School, that's where I did my last.
So a lot of your early living was between the country, between rural and
moving up.
and town. And I don't use the word country because some reason, and you're from Chumuka, right? For some reason, in our parlance, that's not country, that's Leeward.
That's Leeward, yes.
How did that come about? Do you care to tell me?
I don't know why we are Leeward, but I'm saying, but we are country.
Yeah, country as far as I'm concerned.
We're in Leeward.
Let me ask you to compare both of them, because you've experienced town living, you've experienced country living. Which are the richer times?
I don't know in terms of richer. I don't know, but richer or richer. But what I know is that while you were in Chumuka, the days I spent in Chumuka, I felt safe. The days I spent in Chumuka, even though we know that other villages existed, even though we know that there was a capital of our country, and we know that because one of the games we played often with the atlas, everybody had an atlas, and who can find Bridgetown, and you had to find Bridgetown Bridgetown, Barbados. Find the capital of Jamaica. So we knew the world through our maps. Okay, so we knew another world existed, but we felt as though we were complete in our village. In our village, we had a church, which was the most important thing. We had post office. We had school, the Chumuka Primary School. And Chumuka actually started after the 1902 eruptions,
Is that so?
Yes, people were moved away. So it's ideal.
So that's where people settled.
Yes.
They were migrating from the foothills.
Yes, of the Soufrière. So it seemed like a complete and an ideal village to be in. We had a playing field where we played cricket and did sports and everything like that. So
of course, you produced famous cricketers like Mikey Finley.
Mike Finley came out of Chumuka, and everybody in Chumuka knew cricket, and even me. I am the original left-handed batter, Lara.
There you go.
Yeah, so I bat left-handed. So everybody played and knew cricket and so on.
So your village life you speak of very fondly. What were the challenges though? Did you have pipe-borne water? Were you electrified?
As far as I remember, in my time, we had, in my home, we had pipe-borne water. I know that electricity didn't come until a little bit later, but I think, and I speak subject.
So in your consciousness, it was always there, but it was probably just around the time you you came about.
So that was, they were not challenges. What might have been more of a challenge, because you're in a house with 9 siblings, and you have, 1 bathroom. So our father is standing at the door on a Sunday morning to,
marshalling people in and out.
And so on. So I remember that. Otherwise nobody would get to church.
Yeah, and the community living, I'm sure. I mean, you spoke about it, and you spoke very fondly about the playing field and cricket.
Yes.
You must have witnessed a lot of Sunday cricket activity in particular.
Yes, we did. We had many times when people from far, that's what we thought, other villagers from on the windward side, from other places came as a trip to play our team. It was a village affair. Everybody came out and cooked, and somebody at my house there was cooking, at other houses cooking different things to entertain our guests, to welcome them and to entertain them.
That was the red carpet, the food.
Yes. I don't recall any matches, the outcome of any matches, whether our team won or we lost, but we think we always would win. But I know it was a big event. There were big events for our village and the community and so on. Yeah.
There was a sharing and a
Yes.
bonding. We're at the end. In fact, we've gone past the time for the third segment, but so be it. I want to hear your third piece of music, and again, you'll tell me what it is and why.
When I was growing up, you know, before I was 10 years old, this song was very, very present. Slinger Francisco in the calypso world, they know him as the Mighty Sparrow. And he wrote in 1967 a real classic, because it's still, you can hear it today. And education is the great foundation. The rising population needs an education to be recognized everywhere you go. You have to have an education to show. And I use that song, sometimes I use it on the pulpit when I'm preaching. I use it to my nieces and nephews. You know, I said, come on. You know, so to me, it's a real classic, and I love it.
So let's listen to Sparrow, Education.
Education, education, this is the foundation. Our rising population needs sound education to be recognized anywhere you go. You gotta have your certificate to show. To enjoy any kind of happiness, knowledge is the key to success. Children go to school and learn well. Otherwise, later on in life, you go get real help.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentions that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
I got my COVID-19 vaccine and my booster shot to ensure that I am protected. I've never been tested positive for COVID-19, and even if I did contract the virus, I've never been sick. And I'm confident that the COVID-19 vaccine significantly contributed to that. The vaccines are safe, they are effective, and they're one of the ways that we can navigate this pandemic together. If you've not yet considered vaccination or getting your booster shot, I encourage you to do so today. Get vaccinated.
Without an education in your hand, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't allow idle companions to lead you astray. To earn tomorrow, you got to learn today.
You're looking at Profiles, and we're into our final segment with my guest, former Director of Economic Planning, Mrs. Laura Anthony-Browne. Laura, we're into our final segment. Time flies when we're having fun, and I want my viewers to hear a bit about Laura, the lay reader, the preacher, the Methodist preacher. Do you have to have formal training to become a lay preacher?
Yes. In our church, there is a structure. Well, we are called Methodist.
Right.
And we are called Methodist for a good reason, because we are very methodical in the way we do things. So the church is very lay-oriented in that we have more lay people than we have ordained ministry. But the founders did not want or could not see, even though you have lay people, they must have a certain amount of training. So to become a lay preacher, once you're identified, or you offer yourself, or whatever it is, you have to be trained in certain disciplines, in Bible study, in Old Testament studies, in New Testament studies. We also are trained in Christian doctrine and worship and preaching, so that you know how to conduct a service, how to, you're trained to do that.
You're trained. And I think you spoke a lot about your spirituality, but there are many other people who are grounded in the Christian faith, but they don't turn out to be preachers or lay preachers. Why did you choose that path?
I actually never thought of it and didn't consciously choose it. But I was growing up with the young people in my church. We were very involved in the youth group and trying to build and support each other. And we had, at the time when I was active in the youth group, we had a pastor who felt that he should also give us a lot of support and encouragement. And at the time, we had evening services. We had a 7 o'clock in the morning Sunday school, and we had a 7 evening service. And to keep us focused, I think, he would encourage us to, take part in the evening services. And then one day, I think he just said, okay, so the youth group will take the entire service. I'll just be there. So we planned the service, and then somebody has to bring the word. And so I was president of the youth fellowship, and I said, who would do it? Who will do it? And nobody. So then I said, okay, well, I can't embarrass my own group. So I prepared something and so on, and present, so we did, and more of that took place, more of that. And then the church began to take note and say, oh,
You're shining star.
Are you going to go into ministry? I didn't feel that, but then they prevailed upon me to go into the local preaching ministry.
And are you in a comfortable place with that? Is it just like waking up and...
No, every time I go on the pulpit, whatever comes out of my mouth from the pulpit is as a result of hours of prayer and deep preparation. And so it takes me, I think, longer than everybody else, because I'm also, if I go into my little bookshelf, if I'm preparing something and I say, oh yes, I think I remember this person discussed this topic in a way. And so at 10 o'clock, I'm in the little study reading a book. which is unrelated to anything, because I say, oh wow, this is there. Yes, I read this, and then an hour later I'm going back now to what. So when I'm finished, whatever comes out from my mouth, it is as a result of deep prayer and a whole lot of preparation.
So that's why maybe it sounds so profound when you are in the pulpit.
I don't know what it sounds. I admire a lot of preachers. I tell my pastors, I'm not an evangelist. I'm not a dynamic preacher. I'm not one of those, but I will prepare. So, yeah.
There was a newspaper article that you wrote. I can't remember when. Doesn't seem like a long time away.
It was a long time ago.
But time flies.
Yes.
Yeah, but that newspaper article dealt with that whole concept of the broken window and fixing little things before they get really bad. But you were referring to the sort of social and moral malaise. Tell me a bit more about it. What inspired you to write that, really?
Well, I had been complaining with my close friends for some time about a number of things in our country. The article was actually written in 2017. And I had listened earlier that year to the Minister of Education speaking in Parliament about I think school had just reopened, and a number of schools were without furniture. And I think they had videos of children just mashing up furniture. And so there was a conversation about that. And I said, but children, don't wake up one day and decide they're going to be mashing up,
Right.
So this has to be something which is creeping, which has been creeping. And we saw it and we did nothing about it. I am very, very concerned. I was then and I am still today about the state of Kingston. I know we can do better. We can do better with the chaos, the way Kingston looks like it belongs to nobody. I had heard people complain every day about the van drivers and how they conduct themselves.
They're aggressive.
And then I was talking about these things, and I was overseas one morning. We had with my minister, and we had a 7:00 Sunday morning meeting. So I'm waiting in the lobby for him to come down so we can. And I'm saying, why am I here on a Sunday morning? And why am I not at church someplace? And he comes down and he says, as we got into the taxi or whatever, he says, there was a shootout in Kingston, in St. Vincent last night. I think 8 persons were shot. Somebody may have died. I don't remember the detail. And it just, when you are not on the scene, things seem so much worse. And I became really depressed. Already I was depressed. It was already getting kind of cold where we were. And I was objecting in my spirit to having to attend a meeting at 7:00 on a Sunday morning. And so I went back to my room. And I remember that in the conversations that I had been having with some of my friends, we talked about the state of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we discussed this whole broken windows theory. I'd had the book, we discussed the book. A book was written about it, how if things are left unattended, how they creep up. And I could identify with it. Why? I am from Chomoka. We had a schoolhouse where the head teacher, who would come from another part of the country, lived. And then for a period, we didn't need the school teacher. And the house, there was a little broken window, a little glass, so I can relate to it. And then all of a sudden, there were no windows, no glass, no doors in the place. So I could understand. It was the same concept. I know that the theory was much criticized because of the fact that it led to overzealous policing in New York City
Right.
and all, and in California and so on and so forth. But to me, it was a good analogy.
Yeah.
So I sat in my room and I just wrote, I wrote the article. And then I said, okay, I'm going to share it with whoever. And I got it shared.
So it's a memorable piece. You were also, and I'm back to your work as director of economic planning at the time. You sat at the helm when a development plan was produced, a 13-year development plan,
Yes.
economic and social development plan. What were then the pillars? And if you were to rewrite that today, what would change?
I smile because the production of that development plan was really a highlight of the period that I was in, because we wanted to do a plan and we wanted to have something where, and so you work with the all ministries, you worked with your political bosses, you worked with the nation in general.
Yes.
We took the discussions to the major capitals in the Caribbean and in North America and in England,
Yeah, in Europe,
and so on. So we can canvass the views of people as to how we want it. So it was really, really a well thought through and exciting period. And one of that plan has 5 pillars. The first one is re-engineer economic growth.
Yes.
The plan ends theoretically in 2025. It should have been rolled over. And so now it's a good time for them to roll it over, actually. But re-engineering economic growth remains something which is important.
Yes.
Why is it so important? Because in St. Vincent and the Grenadines today, we have a high rate of unemployment, particularly among the young people, and we need to change that. I believe deep down that re-engineering growth, meaning you go to your main pillars of agriculture and the main productive sectors,
Right.
and agriculture has a good chance now to really expand because of COVID, because now we have I think the soil is regenerated because of the volcano and so on.
And then there's the blue economy.
And the blue economy, yes. So, so we focus on the productive sectors to generate some growth in the economy so we can have jobs and so on. In addition to that, we need to focus on education, in a big way. We need to focus on health. Let me
just pull you up with the health. And remember, because you're going to get back to your other pillars, but how much do you see health being dealt with as a proactive lifestyle as opposed to something remedial?
Not enough, not sufficiently. Because in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have the reports. We have a report done, I don't remember the year, by WHO. It's on the internet. And they report that the adult population in St. Vincent and the Grenadines overweight by more, like 25% of the population. No, obese. And overweight, like, another
big percentage. Yes.
And they have written, WHO and these people, and a lot of papers exist on the relationship between our lifestyle,
our choices,
and
food
and our health outcomes,
and what we do, whether we are sedentary or whether we are active.
Precisely. And so to me, we don't need to be told these things anymore. We are big people, so the health is important. Everything you do for development, whether you are doing to promote economic growth and development, would fall flat on its face if the population is unhealthy.
So you got, so far, in re-engineering economic growth, you have education. You're talking about health. We're competing against time here, so let's accelerate.
Yes. Well, of course, the technology, who can get away without paying enough more attention to technology.
Right.
And it's easy because we now have the digital natives. They are more accustomed to the technology than us, you and me, but they do not sufficiently integrate
Yes.
the technology into every aspect of their life, into their education and in every other aspect. So we need to pay particular attention to the technology, and of course the green economy and so on. Those are part of the overall
Do
thing.
you think there needs to be some sort of sustainable element to all of what you set out to do? Because back to your substantive job at the time, when you procured a lot of donor funding for projects, but the projects, as soon as the money ran out, started to have diminishing returns. That speaks. I'm not saying it happened in every case. Don't get me wrong, but it speaks to the aspect of sustainability.
Yes, and sustainability is an important consideration, not only in terms of the projects that you implement, but also in the way in which we use our resources generally. So even if I say that there are opportunities for farming now in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, even if I say that there are opportunities for fishing, it doesn't mean that we must go and buy, I don't know what the boats are called.
So you could catch out every fish.
Yeah, and so on, so that tomorrow we have no resource,
Yes.
So that has to be considered, so the way in which we farm, the way in which we fish,
Yeah.
the way in which we utilize our resources. And then in terms of the project implementation component, you want to be sure that when you are implementing projects, that you have a component in there, which allows the continuity after the donors have gone home.
Right.
So.
And I believe you, just like you felt with the Sustainable Development Goals, the absence of that spiritual element, I believe you are going to tell me the same thing here as well, as one of your pillars.
It is, yes. Yes, it definitely, because I am not saying that we have to have everybody get up and preach, or everybody get, but the realization that we are a people created by God in God's image for His purpose. So, I mean, I might feel that I rule my destiny, but I don't, because we have seen it in the pandemic, how you're here today and in the like that you're gone. So we need to be more attuned into who we are as a people, and I really deeply believe that if we are more conscious of our 3D self, our mind, our body, and our soul, if we are more conscious of that, we would treat each other better. And I firmly believe that things will be better for us as a nation.
And you're introducing the concept of ontology, but we don't have time for that. I'm very happy to have had you, but before I end the program, I would like to hear your fourth bit of music and tell me why, and we shall go out to the end of the program on that selection.
This one is easy, I think. Lift every voice and sing. In 1891, James Johnson wrote a poem, and his brother then turned it into music. It has become what is known as the Negro spiritual anthem. And this is also Black History Month, which ends today. Well, we don't do it in a big way here. So I think that's, yesterday at church, while I was at church, the preacher announced that hymn, and the person who was sitting next to me said, "Oh, that's your song. Lift every voice and sing." And it really, the lyrics are powerful and meaningful. And I love it.
Laura Anthony-Browne, thank you very much for being
Thank
my
you.
guest on
Thank
this
you.
edition of Profiles.
Thank you very much.
We go to the end of the program with a selection, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Thank you for watching Profiles.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.